This is a glorious church here in Guangzhou, and look at the architecture on that. It's really magnificent. But you'll see these once in a while throughout China, these old churches that were set up by the old colonial guard back in the day. And China's been cracking down on a lot of religious freedom, so-called, that they promote. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. Religious freedom in China, does it exist? What is it like? Let's talk about it. Okay, it says Falun Dafu is good. Well, that means Falun Gong, which is the now dissident group in China that started off as being a cultural and semi-spiritual religious group that was a treasure for China. They even called it a national treasure, this organization, because it promoted good, healthy habits for Chinese people. But once they got politically charged, the government tried to disband them, and then you had a series of incidences where people set themselves on fire in Tiananmen Square, and now the Falun Gong, the members of it, are in exile. And it is forbidden to practice this ancient Chinese spiritual and health-related activities.
A rift was inevitable. When the Chinese went after Tibet's religion, they went after its soul. Every Tibetan knows he's simply a link in a chain of reincarnations stretching from the past into the future. The endless chanting of sutras, the constant spinning of mani wheels, prayer wheels, everyday objects, the koras, the ritual circumambulation of holy places 100 times, the prostration pilgrimages made over hundreds of miles. The Chinese occupiers saw these as absurd rites and superstitions that had to be eradicated. That was Mao's mistake. His move to eradicate the religion of Tibet plunged the country into turmoil, and the Dalai Lama remembered he was more Buddhist than Marxist.
Chinese officials have demolished a church in Wenzhou, raising suspicions in the Christian community that the act was part of a campaign against their religion. The government insists there was no such motivation behind the building's removal. They assert it was simply a matter of upholding the law, as the church was in violation of building size limits. At 85,000 square feet, the religious building was 4 times the allotted area. Parishioners learned of the plans to bulldoze their place of worship prior to the slated demolition date and began to protest. For a month, they occupied the church, creating a standoff between themselves and local authorities. In the end, not only was the building ultimately torn down, but several area officials involved in it being built were placed under investigation. Oddly, in the early planning stages, the church construction was approved by the government and hailed as an outstanding display of engineering.
Authorities in northwest China are looking for informants, and they're willing to pay. And one of the things they're looking for is people who have beards. They're worried that those who have beards are potential hazards to society, and so they've set up this informant program. The campaign is currently offering rewards ranging from 50 yuan to up to 50,000 for a wide range of intelligence, from those wearing beards to spreading information to topple the authorities. So, different ends of the spectrum, but both of them are potential hazards to society. And now this is not just some random hatred for facial hair. There is, of course, a religious and an ethnic component to it, because, of course, people in northwest China who are likely to be wearing beards are not likely to be ethnically Han Chinese. They're more likely to be Muslims, Uyghurs,
Chinese
for
leader
instance.
Xi Jinping is saying China is losing its moral compass, officially making him the last to know. Since 2008, about 78 officials a day have been convicted of corruption, according to China's Supreme Court. Oh yeah, and a woman did just gouge out her 6-year-old nephew's eye for some unknown reason. But she has a solution. Tolerate religions. Yes, no more beatings and late-night invitations to tea. Maybe. According to these sources, Xi Jinping thinks the moral vacuum can be filled by traditional faiths. What a novel idea. I mean, religious freedom is only guaranteed in China's own constitution, along with freedom of the press, freedom of speech, and freedom of assembly. And we all know how well that's going. But Xi, head of the officially atheist Communist Party, seems to think that if people become more spiritual, they won't pursue self-interest no matter what the cost, and then they'll be more manageable. Of course, anytime top party officials give an official direction, it usually just ends up making everyone really confused. I mean, what does Xi Jinping mean by tolerating traditional religions? China's traditional religions or faiths are Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism. So, first of all, what does that mean for all those house Christians that refuse to worship at state-sanctioned churches? What about Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang? If Xi Jinping wants to promote Buddhism, is he trying to say that he'll let the Dalai Lama back in and give Tibetans the autonomy they've longed for? I doubt it. Confucianism was also heavily suppressed during the Cultural Revolution, probably because it encourages officials to criticize corrupt leaders, and there's still a lot of resistance to this ancient moral code. In 2011, a 31-foot-tall, 17-ton bronze statue of Confucius was placed right around the corner of the portrait of Mao Zedong in Tiananmen Square. Then one night it just kind of disappeared with no explanation. Some people celebrated the disappearance. I saw in a Times article that on one hardline Maoist website someone wrote, "The witch doctor who has been poisoning people for thousands of years with his slave master's spiritual narcotic has finally been kicked out of Tiananmen Square." However, Beijing Normal University professor Guo Qijia offered a different opinion. He said, "Students come home from school and tell their parents, 'One of my classmates got run over by a car today. Now I have one less person to compete against.' We have lost our humanity, our kindness, and our spirit. Confucianism is our only hope for becoming a great nation."